Hello, and welcome to the Original Remake Podcast, a show where we take the role of Hollywood executives, shamelessly exploiting your nostalgia for money. My name is Pat, and I'm here with Amy,
Hello.
Andrea,
Hello.
and Nick.
Oh, hi.
And today we are discussing the 2015 science fiction film, Jupiter Ascending. So let me quickly summarize the film for those of you who haven't seen it, which is probably a lot of you, because this movie bombed at the box office.
But it plays on HBO a lot, so
it is on HBO a lot, and it jumps around streaming. So maybe people have seen it in the intervening years, but it was definitely a huge bomb when it came out. Didn't make its money back in the box office. That's not counting the marketing costs. So yeah, when you dump a film like that with that much money put into it in February, it's pretty much just the studio saying we want a tax write-off. So
Ouch.
So Jupiter Ascending is about the character Jupiter, and she is secretly a reincarnated version of a queen of a great family, or the mother of a great family, and therefore the owner of several planets, the most important one being Earth, where she was born. And the plot's quite simple. There's 3 evil siblings. First, she gets kidnapped by one evil sibling, and then she gets kidnapped by a second evil sibling, and finally she gets kidnapped by a third evil sibling.
The first evil sibling just talks to her. The second evil sibling tries to marry her and kill her, and the third evil sibling just straight up tries to kill her.
It's a tongue
like the
twister
3 little
right
pigs.
There. Yeah.
Only except with murder. Oh no,
Yeah.
the 3 little pigs had murder in it.
Also in the film is her companion, who is a soldier and also a dog-human hybrid, who is loyal, and they instantly fall in love for each other, and he follows her and chases her throughout the plot, trying to get her back. Again, he is also an idiot. I think the most important thing to point out about this film is both of the main characters are stunningly stupid, and it very much annoys me.
I like dogs.
So I know we're not even through the summary yet, but I've got a couple of points already. So
yeah, I could write an entire essay about this film.
What you said earlier about how Jupiter is like the reincarnation of her mother.
Yes.
No, she's a reincarnation of a queen.
Of a queen. Is actually technically false.
Yes,
that's the way they spin it. That's the way they spin it, but it's really she is the statistical improbability that all of the genes in your genome happen to line up the exact same way as this other person.
Yes, and that is an incredible idea.
She's the genetic happenstance, like genetically exact version of
the previous
person who was a queen.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing concept. And if there's one thing you can take away from this episode, it's that this film like a lot of the Wachowski's films, has incredible ideas and just awful execution.
And some of the worst dialogue that the dialogue is so painful.
Yes.
Like, it's not even just bad, it's painful. Bees don't lie. You couldn't come up. Man, so much rage.
They don't tell the truth either.
My God.
Yeah, it's I would compare this to like prequel Star Wars dialogue. Like if George Lucas secretly wrote this story, I would not be surprised. Yeah. Of course, gets everywhere.
So that was just the first thing. Yeah. The second thing, even though we're only this far into the overview, is that dude is a human dog hybrid and very loyal and falls for this girl. How has he made it this far in life and not had 17 different girlfriends/wives? Like, how has he existed to the point of meeting Jupiter if he's that loyal, endearing, and otherwise falls for the first thing that pays any attention
by
to
Channing Tatum, who is an attractive dude, So, like, can you at least put in some backstory as to why he's undesirable, other than the fact that he's a dog-human hybrid?
Yeah, like
they talk
didn't
about
make
it a
sense.
little bit, that he's kind of like literally a mutt. Like he's, these people are not bred to be upper crust society,
They're
if
bred to
that
be
makes
soldiers.
sense. They're bred to be soldiers, and then they're discarded after use, depending on what they do. Like they even talk about how he's kind of wild, and I think they kicked him out for trying to kill one of the royalty. So yeah, the acting's, we talked about the dialogue. The acting is not great. I don't mind Mina Kunis in this movie, or
Kunis.
generally speaking, but in this movie she's terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Tatum Channing is funny, but certainly not a actor who I think is top tier, and certainly doesn't show that in this role. He mostly just looks mad or sad most of the time, most of the runtime.
He's definitely got the brooding stare off into nothing.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah.
I feel like this movie, so it does a bad job of playing. It doesn't play to the actor's strengths at all. Channing Tatum is like, whenever you see him, he's usually in a funnier role, like Magic Mike, for example, or 21 Jump Street, something fun like that. Or more recently, he was in, what's it called, The Lost City with Sandra Bullock.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty funny.
That wasn't bad, actually.
Yeah, and those are roles that play to his strengths as an actor. I don't know if I've seen Mila Kunis in anything that played to her strengths. I heard she was good in Black Swan, but I didn't see it, unfortunately. But like,
Shut up, Meg.
What?
Shut up, Meg. The
Yeah,
only thing that comes to head.
Yeah, she's good when she voices someone.
Yeah.
I don't think she's ever been in a comedy.
Wow.
No, she was in the movie Ted.
You're right. She was in Ted.
I mean, was she good in that 70s show? I don't know.
I never really watched. I mean, I've watched a couple episodes, but
yeah, same.
I feel like that the only, and I know we'll talk about this more, but the only person who was fit for the role that he was given was Sean Bean's character, and he didn't even die. And it feels, and like it just, I feel like all of the characters were told to just play their characters as flat, like emotionless, monotone, just no expression on their faces, and it showed, and it was bad.
And again, it's one of those things where, like I said, this is terrible dialogue. So even when you have a good actor, it's really hard to make that work. And an example in this film is Eddie Redmayne is typically a really talented actor.
Yeah.
I don't know
in
what
the
he was
same year he won an Academy Award as this movie came out. Yes. In the same year he won an Academy Award for The Theory of Everything, where he played Stephen Hawking. And then in that same year he won a Razzie for this role.
That just shows really dynamic range.
I don't know what he was trying to do with his voice, but it doesn't work.
It doesn't.
I think you have a good point in that it might have been direction.
Right.
Because dude went from 0 to 100. There was no in between, no gray area, no nothing.
Life. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just from like, well, I'm talking in a typical monotone, undertones, to yelling and screaming.
It
just was, and like overacted.
Right.
In those scenes as well. Like it was just bad. I don't have a better way to describe it other than just bad.
I remember reading somewhere that he was trying to be he was mentioned in an interview that he was trying to be over the top, and he knows it was bad. I just feel like everything literally about his performance, from the tone of his voice to his freaking lips, was just awful. Just awful. There was, and when you just like whispered or spoke softly to mimic the kind of garbage that his voice was, like he was talking in a whisper the entire time.
Unless he was screaming.
Unless he was screaming about how he creates life or some other crap.
Yeah.
So I don't want to down on this movie too much. So the dialogue is bad, the acting is bad, the plot is really stupid. Right? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I really like Khalik, who is the female sibling. She's definitely the best performance of the main characters. Her character, I liked her characterization a lot. I think the actress did a good job, but we don't see a lot of her. We don't actually know what her goal is. Her goal tangentially is to get Jupiter to have Earth so her brother can't have it. But outside of that, her character's not given any motivation at all. She's
a plot device.
She's a plot device, yeah.
She's there to half-assedly explain to Jupiter why she is so wanted in this universe. But I mean, I've seen this movie at least 2 or 3 times, and even upon this rewatching, I still didn't put together that Khalik wanted Jupiter to claim her inheritance, like of the Earth. I didn't put that together, and for me, it was hard to connect those dots because it was so unclear as to her actual purpose.
Yes.
She seemed to exist purely for exposition in my eyes.
And not even that good of an exposition, because like I said, she doesn't even explain all the way as to why Jupiter is important. She's just like, well, you look like my mother because you're genetically the same. How do you know that? Just because we look alike?
Well, that, and they wanted to show off the magic white goo that turned you into a 20-year-old again.
Yes. And again, that's a great idea. I think I go back to the main point is Cain and Jupiter are main characters, and they are both thundering dumbasses. They make terrible decisions so the plot can move forward pretty consistently. The fact that Jupiter doesn't see each betrayal coming, like she's like, oh, I guess I'll just marry you, like my the son of the person I used to be when my genes were, realigned, without a question, is absurd, right? It just doesn't make sense. No one with any agency over their own decisions would do that unless they needed it to happen for the plot. I fear this podcast has got off to exactly the type of start I suspected it would do, which is we're ragging on it a lot, and I think there are some good things here. So before we kind of move on, do we want to kind of talk about some of the things we like?
Yeah,
about the film.
Yeah, I can. I inexplicably do enjoy this film. Like, I like it, and I'll sit down and watch it. Like, you know how for Big Trouble in Little China, you're like, oh, let me flip through the channels. What's on? Oh, Big Trouble in Little China's on. I mean, I don't have to watch it. And then an hour later, you're like, oh crap, I sat down and watched it. That's what Jupiter Ascending is for me. And like, I don't know what it is. Like, maybe because it's so bad, it's hokey. The costumes are freaking amazing. Like, I want to wear every single dress in, like, everything they put Jupiter in is gorgeous. Man, I love it. I don't know what it is about this film. Everything says all signs point to terrible, but I really like it. And maybe because it's the campiness, maybe because Cain is fun to look at. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like, maybe it's the story of someone going from like having nothing and being raised poor and going from selling your eggs to owning the entire planet, which is appealing to me. I'm not really sure, but whatever it is, like, I rag on this movie because I want it to be amazing. And it just makes me so sad. But I will sit and watch it time and time again.
I have seen it 4 or 5 times at this point. It's a film that the ideas in the film, and again, this is something that the Wachowskis do often, which is their ideas are great, execution terrible. The ideas for a science fiction film or franchise are in here are fantastic. I love the world building. I love some of the effects. The action, I think, leaves a lot to be desired, but I think the effects so far as the ships and kind of, the idea that like Jupiter's red spot is just a secret portal is really, really cool.
Refinery. Yeah. Like some of the environments are really dope. But
I like the first action sequence. I thought it started off really well.
I don't like the hover boots. They just seem dumb.
Well, I do.
Like the fact that you have to skate, like they should just be.
No other movie has done that.
Yeah, because it's dumb.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
I don't
they should
mind
just be
hover boots.
Thank you.
They should just be. Well, I don't mind boots to like let you fly, but like, why do you have to like get up to speed? Like just
right.
Superman 4.
Right. Like Guardians.
Yes.
Like there's
boots.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
But I like where you guys were going with this. I can't speak to the costumes as much. I thought they were good, I guess, but that's not really a focal point of mine. The CG though. The CG was fantastic, and it makes me regret not seeing it in IMAX when it came out.
Yeah.
Because this was visually appealing.
Yeah, it was visually delicious.
Yeah, it was.
Apparently, right as they started production, the production budget got slashed almost in half.
Oh.
So the studio was betting big on this movie, and then at the last minute, they're like, actually, here's half the money we were going to give you.
Wow.
I mean, they should have put that money towards a story and not visuals, but
it looked astonishingly good. And I do love the world building that the Wachowskis were doing.
Like I would love to hear more about that world.
Form.
Yeah.
What?
I'd love to read this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, reading Jupiter Ascending would be great.
Not just reading it. It would make a fantastic comic book.
Ooh, graphic novel. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the I've talked about like the ideas that I love. Maybe I will just kind of quickly go into specifics. So in the Jupiter Ascending universe, anything, and the Wachowskis did this in the Matrix as well. Anything that's kind of like a myth or a cryptid in our world is actually a result of aliens existing. So not just UFOs, but dragons, werewolves,
Deja vu,
yeah, like so anything that even the snatchers who go down and snatch people look like the pop culture aliens, right? When if you remember the scene where
the
little gray aliens try to grab her, those are kind of Roswell style aliens, right? So it's meant to indicate, hey, what you think is kind of this pop culture conspiracy theory is actually there's a huge empire there, controlling us, that type of thing. I love that idea, that the idea that our myths, our legends are just other aliens that accidentally show up sometimes. It's just great.
I thought that scene was the worst.
What, the dragons part?
No, where
Roswell
they were
Grays.
taking her while she was under.
Oh, gotcha.
That was completely unnecessary. It threw me. That's the point of the movie where I just started really not liking it.
I
probably when I fell asleep too. I don't remember. I fell asleep.
I do like the idea, or that premise that everything that happens in our history that we can't explain, that we're kind of writing off as conspiracy theories, is something that actually has more depth and more meaning to it. And it's also one of the reasons I actually liked Stargate. Like the whole idea that the Egyptians were actual gods.
Yes.
And what Stargate SG-1 turned that into and expanded it into the mythos.
Actually gods though.
But from the perspective.
They're godlike beings,
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of what drew me to that movie and series, but so I guess that's kind of a sucker punch way to get me into intrigued, if you will, with something like this.
It's a common science fiction trope as well. There's a novella by one of my favorite authors, Adrian Tchaikovsky, called Elder Race, and it's basically about, if you don't know how the science works, then it's just magic, right? And so literally one character is from another planet and he's doing something that he knows what it is. He knows how to explain it. He knows the scientific laws around it. But to his traveling companion, who is a kind of a native, it looks like magic, even though it's just like a hover bike or, a laser gun or something. And I love that kind of that idea is just underexplored in film science fiction.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's underexplored anymore with the depth that like Stargate SG-1 went to. I mean, they went all the way up to like Arthurian legend and stuff like that. So I think they really kind of played that out. But
I have to watch more of those shows. I've only seen like the main movie.
Okay.
You really should.
It's good. It's up there with Star Trek on my list.
Again, like Star Trek. Just try to power through the first season.
Yeah, the first season.
That's fine.
Not great.
Listen, if it's on TV and it was 20 years ago, you're allowed to be bad. That's my rule. If you've got a low budget, that's fine. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show Dark Matter. The first season's really good, but it's a very low budget or low budget compared to sci-fi, and you kind of have to forgive sometimes the limitations of what they can do effects wise. So
the time period.
No, that was a good series as well. Nice idea of scrambling everybody's brains and bodies.
Yeah.
But anywho,
to wrap up this kind of overview, why we want to remake it section, one thing I kind of put in the notes here that as I was rewatching it, having seen Dune multiple times since it came out, Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1, this film kind of feels like Dune a little bit.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one that thought that.
There's like a powder you ingest to like make you clairvoyant. Spice. Yeah, the spice. It kind of makes you live forever as well. Not forever, but a long time.
Except this movie is finally something way better than Dune.
What?
Whoa, get out of my house.
I feel, well, I mean, for me, it was a lot of the whispering, a lot of the talking very silently, because in the original Dune, like, there's a lot of people that are like, Paul thinks to him, like he talks to himself a lot, but it's not really like you just like a close up on him and it's you hearing a voiceover. And also the names sound very similar, like Atreides, Abrasax. I was like, this
it's Abrasax.
Abrasax.
But yeah, I think there's similarities. I'm assuming the Wachowskis were kind of looked to Dune for inspiration in some ways. So, all right. So the movie's bad. The acting's bad. Some of the special effects are fine, but some of it's bad. The dialogue's bad. The plot's bad. Most things are bad, and we want them to be less bad. That's the synopsis.
Costumes are great.
Costumes are great. Keep the
World
costumes.
building is great. Setting is great.
Keep the dragons.
Yes.
I don't know about that.
One thing that we were talking about with the dragons, this is like a throwback to Amy's episode about Super Mario Brothers. I think we were talking about how like the dragons in this movie kind of looked like what we thought the
Koopas would look
like.
It would be so much better.
Yeah.
If we could just like download the Jupiter Ascending dragons and plunk them into the Koopas spot on Super Mario Brothers.
And yet it would still not make either film better.
You don't know that. On that note, should we skip ahead to the casting before she tears my head off?
Yes, that was a great conversation. Let's do casting. So for casting, we're doing 6 characters. We're doing Jupiter, Kane, Stinger, and then the 3 siblings, and everyone else who are mostly minor characters we won't bother casting for. So
irrelevant.
Yes, not important enough.
I mean, I almost didn't cast Khalik because I didn't think that she was a big enough character, but
yeah,
you did, so I figured I had to as well.
I think if we were to remake the film, the relationship between the 3 siblings and what they do in the film has to change. So I wanted to cast all three of them, but we can move past them pretty quickly because it's, again, they don't have a lot of screen time in the film.
I mean, except Balaam. That's important.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So let's start with the main character, Jupiter. I picked Jenna Ortega, who is kind of the current big thing, having done Wednesday, which is the Addams Family show.
Oh.
And she's been in some other stuff that I've not seen. You, Amy, you've seen the show You.
I have seen You. I saw Wednesday.
She looks just like Mila Kunis.
She does.
Very similar, actually.
Yeah. Only
I don't really know her acting range.
I've only seen her as Wednesday Addams, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Same. I just kind of picked her. I'm like, oh, that's a younger actress who, like, if they wanted to do a franchise, could
keep
grow
it going.
into it. So yeah.
All right.
I picked I think this is how you pronounce her name. I'm gonna butcher it. Esme Creed Miles. Or Natalie Portman, but I'd rather go with Esme Creed Miles. She played Hannah in Amazon Prime's version of Hannah. She's smart, can do an accent well. I really liked everything that she did. Everything that she did in that show. I feel like if you're going to use Mila Kunis and make her character Russian, you really need to use the fact that Mila Kunis speaks Russian. Like, include that in more than they did, even like an accent or something. But I feel like,
but would you want to watch a 2-hour movie of Mila Kunis try to do a Russian accent? Because I don't.
I mean, I don't either, but I would like to see her use, the language that she knows, especially if she's going to be playing a Russian character.
I thought that's a pretty low-hanging fruit there too, to just say, hey, can you throw a few of your lines out in Russian?
Yeah.
One thing to remember is that the character Jupiter was raised in America as well. So she'd pick up some of the Russian, but
her entire family speaks it.
That's true.
Like they wake up and her mother tells her to get up in Russian.
Yeah, but her English accent wouldn't be super Russian. There might be a little bit in there.
Okay.
I think Natalie Portman is probably too old, but I really like Esme Creed Miles. I haven't seen the TV show Hannah. It is definitely on my list to watch. So maybe I have to get to it, but she looks, based on the pictures I'm looking at, like she could definitely play the role. And if she's done the action side of things, which I know Hannah is an action espionage show, I think that works.
I mean, she's pretty badass, I think, anyway.
And the TV show goes into a little bit more range. But I also picked Hannah.
Yeah.
Different Hannah. I picked Saoirse Ronan.
Saoirse.
Really
Nope,
poorly.
you said it perfect.
Saoirse Ronan. And that's also Amy's pick.
Yes, actually. We're all going on the same concept of lead ladies.
In the Hannah movie, which is kind of where I was coming from when I made the pick, it just popped into my mind as someone who could actually do everything that Mila Kunis did, just better.
She is a very talented actress. She really is. I don't know if
Can she do a Russian accent?
Again, I
feel like with a vocal coach, which is things that they pay people for.
Yeah, but doesn't matter.
I mean, yeah, because I had a really hard time understanding any of the dialogue in this movie.
I mean, she has been in movies where she's had an American accent. Couldn't really tell.
Yeah, I think she's got a really good range. I don't know if anyone's seen, this is kind of a cult indie film. It's called Byzantium.
And I've heard of that.
It's a vampire movie, not necessarily classic, but kind of an underrated film that not a lot of people have seen. I thought was a really good take on a vampire story. So, but she's been in lots of other stuff as well. We saw her this year in See How You Run, where she kind of played a bumbling idiot detective, like junior novice detective, and she was great in that. She played the comedy fantastic. So I could definitely see any of the three we picked taking the role. All right, so let's move on to Kane then.
I think your pick is pretty good. Not gonna lie.
My pick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went with John Boyega. Probably most well known as Finn from Star Wars. Before that, he was in another indie film called Attack of the Block, and he's been in a couple movies that I like. The Second Pacific Rim is not very well loved, but I have a soft spot for it, and I thought he was okay in it. And he's done some dramatic roles as well. I know this year he was in a film called Breaking, which I haven't seen, but apparently got good reviews. So I think he is someone who has the range, but can also play someone who is stoic and loyal. That kind of that character Kane has to be, if that makes sense.
It does. That's why I picked Sebastian Stan.
I think that's a good one too.
Yeah.
I agree.
Can't say much more than that. Like
we've used him a lot because he's just a perfect go-to person.
So good
for like you need like a middle-aged stoic but still chill actor.
I who can also have a sense of humor. I don't think I've picked Sebastian Stan for anyone in my recastings at all.
Yeah, I know collectively we've cast him a couple times.
I didn't go for stoic first. I went for comedy first. Because after seeing what the movie tried to do with that, badass character vibe out of the gate and tried to really push that throughout the movie, I wanted to try and kind of flip that on its head a little bit. So I went with someone who started in more fun roles and went to more of a biopic. I picked Taron Egerton. Edgerton. Taron Edgerton.
He played what's his face?
Eggsy
in The Kingsman.
Yeah.
And then he played
he was in Sing.
Elton John.
Elton John in Rocket Man. And I think he did a pretty good job in that. And I don't know. Just kind of like the guy.
He's a close personal friend of yours?
Yeah. Me and T go way back.
I do like him. I don't know if I like him more than Boyega or Sebastian Stan. But it's not a terrible pick.
You and your opinions are allowed to be wrong.
You're not terrible, you're just the least good.
All right, mister. What'd you get for Balaam there?
So Balaam is the oldest sibling. He is the person who inherited Earth. He was played by Eddie Redmayne. And having seen House of the Dragon quite recently, I went with Matt Smith, who played a fantastic villain in that show, but has also played someone lighthearted, so he has the range. And I think you just want to play him straight villain. If I could take the character of Daemon out of House of the Dragon and put him into this film, I would just do it. I mean, it's a perfect transition from that role to what I think this role should be. So I'm with Matt Smith.
Good pick.
Okay. I could see that.
I went with Christian Bale. Mostly because I know he would like throw himself into it, and it would be interesting and fun, I think.
You'd actually said this the night we watched the movie, and I was in complete agreement back then.
Okay, what I say?
No, Christian Bale. You
Yeah.
said Christian Bale would be a good choice. At that moment, I was like, oh yeah, I could see that. But thinking on it, I don't know. I think he'd turn out exactly like Eddie Redmayne. I think he'd do the role exactly the same way.
No, but Eddie Redmayne wasn't trying to be good.
Are you sure?
I think he was trying. I'm sure he just
I don't
failed at being
know.
good.
I don't think he put that much effort into.
So I
Flop it.
do think that Christian Bale can play any number of roles, and I think he'd be an okay villain. He occasionally overacts, but he's not like Sean Penn or anything like that. You know what I mean? In my view.
Okay.
But if
I
you
don't
want
know.
to say I made the best choice in Matt Smith, feel free to do so. I mean,
See, I just
What about
on
my
general
choice?
principle don't want to say those words out loud. I can't do that. It might pain me.
what was your pick, Amy?
My pick was Benedict Cumberbatch
Oh,
Wow.
interesting.
Okay.
because I saw the character and I'm like, who could I just plop in there and do it better? And I just saw him. He
What
was really
kind
good
of-
into Darkness as a bad guy.
He played Khan in Star Trek.
I didn't
did.
like him in that
Right.
film. I think
I
that's one
know.
of his worst performances.
I know
though.
you didn't like him, but I did.
Okay. That was
Like,
actually going to be my next question: is what role would he be coming from? What was the one that inspired
I
you?
feel like that's the only one I've seen him where he is portrayed as a villain. Is there another movie he's been in?
I mean, he's not a villain in Sherlock, but he is a very cruel and crass character
Yeah.
in Sherlock. So he's a good actor. I'm sure he could do it, but I wouldn't want in that what's the Star Trek movie called?
Into Darkness.
Into Darkness. In that film, it looks like he's trying to pronounce every word as completely as possible before he moves on, and so his sentences become
which is why
obnoxious.
this character reminded me of the one in the movie.
Well, now that you mention that, I think he's an excellent fit based off of
My
Redmayne's performance.
name is Khan.
Silence.
I read this article and I'm looking back at it now as I Google it, saying that Eddie Redmayne was actually very good at playing Balaam. And it was just like, because he was supposed to be like an over the top. I'm reading this again.
Oh, that the performance was intentional the way that it was, in that character as described by, say, the Wachowskis was just that unhinged.
So this article from Collider says Balaam is so strange that had he been a normal villain, we would not remember the movie we would not remember the movie like this, and he would just be a forgettable villain.
See, that's funny because I actually kind of see him as a forgettable known villain. Like, I don't.
So
not invested in any way.
So this article says that the Wachowskis make they have their actors make choices, and they while not every choice they make works, even their most bizarre moments never feel like an accident, is what this article says. And they're saying if he is acting like an emphysemic drag queen, it's because that's what the Wachowskis wanted him to do. That's what this article points
he's like I said, he's a great actor, so I don't blame him necessarily for the performance, but he, ultimately it doesn't work at all. So he's, All right, so let's move on then to Khalik, who is the middle sibling, the female. I've gone with someone who's actually in this film, and I didn't realize it when I picked her. Vanessa Kirby, I'm a huge fan of. She kind of came to prominence when she was in the early seasons of The Crown. But she's been great in the Mission Impossible films. She was in Fast and the Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, which is one of the few Fast and Furious films I've actually seen by accident, and I actually didn't hate it that much, and she was fine in it. But I think she's just, as an actress, she's very beautiful. She's got something like, it feels like she's instinctively classy, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so I think she could play the role very well. In this film, in the original Jupiter Ascending, she plays the eye candy in the beginning of the film in the lingerie, Jupiter's like rich friend.
Oh,
That's
I was
actually-
wondering where
That's actually her.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He looks a little different in my mind. Okay.
Yeah, she's definitely different, but yeah, it was a very it was very strange to see that. I didn't realize it. But yeah, so
Good pick.
thank
Good actress. Bad choice of character. Guess.
you. Yeah.
I personally wouldn't or didn't have a pick for Khalik. I think just about any female actress could just jump into the role and do what this movie needed that character to do.
Yeah, I definitely want her to do more in my remade version of the film.
Okay, that's fair.
So that's why I
That's
wanted
fair.
to recast her, because she really is, for me, one of the most wasted characters in the film.
She really is.
Yeah,
It's
there's
sad.
so much more potential for that role to do more world building, do more character exposition, and so on. You could
Have
really
her have
leverage
a bigger role, as opposed to someone who explains what's happening and then just is never seen from again, right?
Yeah.
Andrew, you have a pick though. What's your pick?
I don't like it.
All right, let's skip it then.
It's not a bad pick.
I don't like it either.
Oh, Pat.
Amy, what's your pick? Do you have a pick?
I didn't pick.
So I win automatically. Perfect.
I guess I'm on the same wavelength as Nick.
All right, let's go to the younger sibling then, Titus. I've gone with Ben Barnes. Does anyone know who Ben Barnes is?
Nope.
Let's
I do
find
not.
out.
You're missing out. He was in Westworld, is where one of the big things I
Great
know him
Oh,
from.
this guy.
Great pick.
He was
Did not know
from
that's who-
Chronicles of Narnia. He was in.
the Chronicles of what?
He's been in a bunch of other stuff. We started watching Shadow and Bone, which he's in, but we didn't finish. We got like 2
No,
episodes into that
we
show, and we're
didn't.
like, this is too teenage.
But he's fun to look at.
He's a very handsome man. I'm no, I won't argue with you there.
I could see him in that role. Good pick.
Yeah. Oh, he was in Stardust for a bit as well, which is a great film.
Eh.
Looks like when he was much younger. But yeah, I think he's an actor that if
Hasn't
you look
this
at
guy been in like a TV commercial recently?
Yes.
Like all over the place?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I refuse to watch TV commercials,
What,
so I
State
wouldn't know.
Farms?
I don't remember the
Okay.
commercial. It was only on when I was watching the football game the other day.
Gotcha. Yeah, he's an actor that's been in a lot of different things, but has never kind of blown up. You know what I mean? He's never been a top tier actor, and I think he's definitely got kind of the charisma and the acting chops from what I've seen him in to be up there with kind of like your other, male leads. So
Gotcha.
Good pick.
all
Like
right, who's
Andrea's
next?
pick too.
I picked Robert Pattinson.
I think that's a good
Um,
pick.
I feel like he could be a scumbag.
With or without glitter.
With that character needs to have glitter. Like that particular character is like he spent his inheritance on that lavish ship.
So you just want to bring over a sparkly vampire.
I mean, I didn't say vampire, but sparkly, yes.
He has absurd amounts of money. If he wants to be sparkly, he can.
Yes.
I don't mind Robert Pattinson. I think I'm on record as saying he's a terrific actor despite his teenage, drama years in Twilight and the like. If you look at some of the roles he's taken over the past like decade, he's clearly a good enough actor to do it. So I like that pick as well. All right, so moving on then finally to Stinger, who we haven't really talked about in this episode, but Stinger is Kane's compatriot. He's another soldier. And previously when I mentioned that like the plot doesn't make sense and there's like portrayal after portrayal that like just is out of character consistently, Stinger is a character who is tangentially one of the good guys. He's another plot device to explain what's happening to Jupiter. And then throughout the plot, he betrays the good guys, then betrays the bad guys, and then just kind of sits out the final fight on a ship. He's played by Sean Bean in the original film.
And he should have died.
If we know
anything about Sean Bean, he dies in almost every single film he's in.
He must for the movie to do well. If they did anything wrong with this movie, they kept Sean Bean's character alive.
I think he actually did like a YouTube video with some journalism, like some magazine or something, saying that like talking about like the film roles that he's been in and how he just keeps on dying in all of them.
Yeah. Can I jump in here and say that people who think Sean Bean should die in every movie haven't seen enough Sean Bean movies?
Maybe.
He was fantastic in Ronin, which is a late 90s espionage action thriller, and he gets to walk away from that one. He had a 20 movie British TV series called Sharps Rifles. That counts. It's a long series of 20 plus movies that he lives in.
20 plus movies.
It's got to be. I wonder how many there is. There's got to be tons. I'm typing it in now. Sharps Rifles series.
Oh God.
His character has died in 29 different films and or movies.
I'll admit that's a lot. I'll give you that. But he's been in a lot of stuff.
And most of those are actually good. So, logically, for a movie to be good, Sean Bean must die.
Maybe in the sequel.
Listen, Ronin is one of the most underrated espionage films of its generation, and Sharp's Rifle is a classic, and I won't hear any more said about it.
Listen, since you're not listening anymore, I can make this point. I have heard of Jupiter Ascending. I have not heard of Ronin or some dude's rifle. So, just saying that I think my logic is perfect and spot on. That if a movie's gonna be good and Sean Bean's in it, he's got to go.
That's fair. And you know what? Sharp's Rifles was pretty early in his career before he got the once you start dying, everyone's like, "Well, just kill him off."
But I mean, I would keep Sean Bean in this particular role. Where we have this self-imposed rule that you can only keep one character from the original cast, and I mean, he just does it really well.
I think he's a good pick.
He has a pile of garbage to work with, sadly, and he does a good job with it.
But not in our remake.
I mean, bees. That's all I gotta say. The bees don't lie.
All right, I picked Lance Reddick. Let me start that again. I picked Lance Reddick, who probably most people know from the John Wick series these days. He plays the hotel concierge. That word. Yeah, we'll keep it in. There's another word I can't pronounce. But if you're a person of real class and stature, you know him from The Wire and you know him from Fringe, which are probably his best stuff. I love Fringe. I love The Wire. They're two excellent shows. And I just think he's one of those actors that is always kind of taking on smaller roles that are kind of not the main roles, and I think Stinger would fit perfectly here. He's a really good actor. He can be stoic enough when he needs to be, but we've seen in The Wire specifically, he's got some decent range as well. So I really like that actor, and I want to see him in more stuff.
Even though it's not Sean Bean, I'll allow it.
We can still kill him off.
That's not the important part. If it's not Sean Bean, he can stay if he's not Sean Bean. Do it for the meme. Do it for the meme.
All right. Well, that was an exciting casting session. Let's talk about something else now.
What shall we talk about, Pat?
We'll talk about changes to the film, Nick. Changes. Does anyone want to jump in, or should I just start talking? Does anyone?
Why don't you talk?
Yeah, it's your movie. It's your movie.
Away,
You go.
Pat.
All right, I'll go first. And I think the one thing that I put down first is this film is 2 hours long, and I am one of those people who doesn't care about sitting in a movie theater for 3 hours. When a movie needs to be 3 hours long, make it 3 hours long. I don't care. And this movie just needed to be longer. They could have added a lot more in. And so you could spend 3 hours developing the characters, developing the plot threads.
Mm-hmm.
Avatar: The Way of Water does this. Does Avatar: The Way of Water need to be 3 hours and 12 minutes long? No, but the time they spend explaining the world building, and not just the world building, but specifically how certain things work, like how the ship gets the resources they need to get, actually makes the later scenes work better because they spent that time explaining it, so you know exactly what is going on. There's no guesswork, and that's what this film needs.
And if the content is interesting, it won't really feel like 3 hours at all.
Correct. I mean, The Way of Water did drag a little bit in the middle, but
we could use some of that time to develop the characters like Khalik, who are horribly underdeveloped and are really, they're just plot devices like we talked about. And more time would help.
More time would help, and I think you can add more time as well by taking things out of this film. I don't know if we need a couple of examples are towards the beginning of the film, you get an extended cut of like her family, and some of those characters just don't need to be there. There's one of her cousins is the person to convince her to sell her eggs. Just have her decide to do it. You don't need a subplot of her cousins trying to steal money from her.
It's like,
whatever.
We understand your family's trashy and poor. We get that through the other clues surrounding her life. We don't need her cousin egging her on to for her to sell her eggs. See what I did there?
Oh God.
Yeah. I need money. Here's how I get money. You can cut out the rest. That character doesn't need to exist.
Yep.
That's
where you save money.
What you're trying to do with the character, because so you leave it as it is and you end up with a stupid character who is unable to think for herself and think, oh, you know what, maybe this is a bad idea. Well, I'll do it for the money anyways. Or you put it all on the character, and then what does that say about the character's thought process or any sort of like morality or anything like that? How does that affect or change the character if now all of a sudden you don't have an external third party pushing that agenda? You think of it yourself and you do it on your own. I say you just get rid of that whole nonsense and switch it up to just something simple like a dentist appointment, something routine. You're in for a doctor's visit.
Yeah, I could do that as well.
Because then you don't have to play with any sort of backstory or any predisposition that the audience may have just witnessing the situation play out in either way. You just make it something routine. Because really, that only seems to exist so that the Roswell Greys can go in and try and offer on the table.
I mean, knowing
that she's the genetic match and then kill her.
I feel like that knowing the Wachowskis and knowing their intention behind a lot of the choices they make, I am sure that, I mean, they could have like had her sell anything else, but her eggs, like, I feel like that's not.
You think there's some deeper symbolism to that?
I think maybe. I mean, I might be digging too far into it, but like,
you're probably not. They probably tried to make some symbolism out of it, and it's gone over everyone's head because this movie's terrible.
Or maybe they had a scene that explained it or went into it in more depth and they cut it.
Cutting room floor.
Right. Because I feel like, I mean, how many people would get mad with today's political climate about someone selling their eggs? Yeah,
I don't know that it.
Just a thought.
If it were a motivation of the Wachowskis, I'm leaning into Pat's camp of it didn't hit.
Yeah.
So
there were a lot of things
should be on the chopping block. And if you're going to do that, you can get rid of the whole the whole attempt at comedy scene where the cousin goes and spends all the money that he doesn't have yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that didn't need to exist.
That is one example out of many in this film where there are jokes that just fall flat
Yes.
when they should have worked. But they just don't.
Yeah, I think the film needs to be more serious. The second example of something that just doesn't need to be in this film is when she gets to kind of that government center, which I can't remember what it's called. We go through this kind of bureaucracy nightmare that is right out of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or I don't know if anyone saw Valerian and the Thousand Planets or whatever that movie was called. That was
Valerian
also
and the City of a Thousand Planets.
that's the name of it. Not very good, but based on a comic book that supposedly is a classic. This just out of nowhere, just kind of it takes a serious part of the film and then immediately turns it into a satirical
Satire,
comedy for like 5 minutes before, out of nowhere, in the middle of the government center, she is just kidnapped, and then the plot moves on. Like for a second, I didn't know what was happening. Like, oh, are they kidnapping her, or did she like go there willingly? Because like she didn't scream. There were no police stopping this person. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's so underdeveloped that if we cut out the we're gonna make a joke out of this, you can like actually have a plot point where and an action scene, where she gets stolen by Titus, and it actually makes sense, right? Like it doesn't make sense what she's doing right now to leave with them. You know what I mean?
That scene kind of has to be there a little bit though. Now the bureaucracy part may be done in a different way because it, in my mind, leaves it opens the door a little bit to why the captain of the ship towards the end is the way that she is and is willing to break the rules and be like, oh my God, you'd be tied up in red tape for months just asking for approval to do this thing. So I'm just you do you. You want to take a mech warrior suit and go blow through a line of mines? You do you.
I feel like that I don't think you need 5 minutes of movie to explain that one line.
I agree. I think there's a better way to do it. I just can't see that
probably
at the moment.
Just treat it seriously, right? Like don't treat it as a bit.
Okay. Right. And I feel like that this was like a ham-fisted attempt at like having a social commentary piece thrown into the film. Like unnecessary comment on bureaucracy is unnecessary and forced. And it was just kind of like a whole thing about how many hoops you have to jump through just to get to your identity. And that's a theme that the Wachowskis play on a lot, which is cool, but they could have done it a little bit differently. I mean, they could have made it fit with the tone of the movie instead of just sort of shoehorning it in.
Yeah, I don't think this movie should be that funny, if at all. Like just treat it like a serious science fiction film and don't go ham with it. Don't go hammy, don't go cringe with it, that type of thing.
When you do that, you also have those comedic moments. They mean more.
Yeah.
Like Star Trek, First Contact, Data gets an emotion chip and he does a little ditty when he's scanning for life forms.
That is actually Star Trek Generations, sir.
I'm so sorry. Please don't take away my nerd card.
I'm taking it away.
But Data does his little do for scanning for life forms, and it hits so hard.
Maybe
it is
you.
Hilarious.
Actually,
it
really
fantastic.
I actually really hate that part of the movie.
It is amazing.
For me, it's like one of those secondhand embarrassment kind of things,
hilarious.
and I just want to disappear. I hate that.
It is so great.
Oh no.
But for an otherwise relatively serious movie, when you do a well executed joke, it hits that much harder. It means that much more.
Yeah, or if you're gonna have a joke, like have a couple of bits. Like there's a fantasy series called The First Law, written by Joe Abercrombie, and a couple of the characters are serious characters, one of them's a torturer. But he has like this thing that runs through his head that like someday he's going to be betrayed and it'll be his body they find floating in the canal. So every now and then he'll like go through kind of this negative thought process, and then in italics you'll see body found floating in a canal ... And it's just this reoccurring bit that it's kind of like you're laughing with the author, like the author's telling you a joke, right? The character is saying it to themselves, but what's happening is the author is looking at you through the page and saying, look, let's have a little bit of fun. And you can do that if it's a consistent if the bit is consistent throughout the film. But this just kind of feels, the movie is like dead ass serious with the exception of the cousin, and then just in the middle of the movie there's 5 minutes of nonsense, and then they go back to the rest of the movie, we're dead ass serious, no jokes. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that.
It doesn't flow right.
It doesn't flow at all, yeah. And so you want it to be, if there's going to be a joke or a bit throughout the movie, you kind of want to make that a little consistent.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned that someone mentioned that some of the action sequences were good. I don't know who said that.
It was me.
Oh, I think they were good. I just think they were a little long. That's one thing that I would change. Like around the 2 to 3 minute mark, I was getting a little bored.
I could see that. Yeah.
So I'd shorten them.
I didn't like the hover boots, but I did like there's a scene early on in the film where they kind of fall on this alien ship and eject him, and then they get into the ship, and I know that's kind of dumb, but you can do it in a cool way. And I like when they got into the ship that they, that they were having kind of this fight through the city and things like that. So yeah, some of the action is okay, but some of the effects are okay, but it's mostly like in the space opera side of things. When it comes to actually the characters are fighting each other, I find most of that action to be incredibly boring and subpar, especially from the people who made The Matrix, right?
Right.
And The Matrix.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
That's my thing, is the choreography that they put into the original, the first Matrix movie. Like, it's not perfect, but with bullet time, it was revolutionary in what we were watching. And you go from that to what we watched in Jupiter Ascending, and it's just, where am I? What is this place? Make it stop.
And I know they're a couple decades apart, but The Matrix in 1999 cost about 60 million, and Jupiter Ascending cost almost $180 million.
Oh my!
Wow.
How did we get worse at this when we're spending more money, right?
Wow.
So yeah, like the action was just boring, right? It was those kind of like bounty hunters who were after them. I never felt that they were a threat at all in any way, really. Even when they're fighting in the kind of bee house there, that was all boring to me. And then they all just disappear and never show up again. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, they return, but
do they?
Yeah, I don't remember. They return to shoot up the house, but I don't remember what happened. Maybe it's a different set of bounty hunters. I don't know.
No. They shoot up the alley in the doctor's office. They have that fight. Then they go to Sean Bean's house where they have another fight.
Mm-hmm.
But then we just like, they have spaceships they can just leave and follow. Like, you could have those people come back, and instead of just having her being kidnapped by anyone, have the bounty hunters get her or whatever.
Yeah.
Because Titus hired those bounty hunters to get her.
Right.
But Khalik
got her first.
Yes.
For reasons? I don't remember.
Everyone was going after her because basically keep her away from Balaam. It was the big keep away from Balaam game. Yeah, there could have been more done there. Because eventually Titus does steal her away from Khalik, and it could be those same bounty hunters.
Yeah, because one of them betrays the other two. So one of them betrays the other two and takes her to Khalik instead of Titus. That's what happens. But the The original plot is the three of them are getting her for Titus.
Right.
Right. That's what Kane was there to do. He was Titus's bounty hunter. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Titus
Is the one that tried to marry her.
How was that?
I don't
Is that
think
really
that's,
what it was?
I don't think that's
Yes.
right.
So the fact
Kane was
that we're
protected.
even asking these questions shows that the movie doesn't make
It needs
enough
to-
sense.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
She might be right. I think
yeah, I think maybe you're right. Maybe Kane was from Titus and the other three.
Kane had to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
It
but
would make sense.
yeah.
He is an ex-Legion Lycant splice hunter sent to kidnap Jupiter by Titus.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Well done.
All right,
Well,
but yeah,
now it all
fa-
makes sense.
yeah, the fact that it doesn't like intrinsically make sense, and we have to like look up a Wikipedia plot. Like, wait, what is that? Is that the way it happened?
Yeah.
We've all seen
Exactly.
this movie multiple
And
times.
we've seen this movie
exactly.
within the week,
Yep.
Yeah.
so
Man.
It could have been so much better. I wanted to say something a little more specific, but honestly, just better.
staying on action, there's a scene that I really want to like more, and that is where Sean Bean and Channing Tatum get the kind of like angel mechs and fly through the what they call the hammers, which is like a minefield that like they can track you. That ended up being a little boring of them just kind of like quick shots of them like in their suits and then things exploding around them. But I
Just
really
a
love
bit
the
of
idea.
Pacific Rim feel.
Yeah. I really love the idea of those mechs kind of like assaulting a ship and having to like dodge missiles and things like that, and having things on the suit that can kind of kind of help them get onto the ship. I really like that, and I feel like there's a cool action scene there somewhere. But they're cool again. They're cool concepts, but it doesn't work on the screen. It's just kind of generically boring.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just generally the action, I want them to make an action movie. It doesn't have to be like revolutionary like The Matrix. The Matrix Reloaded, the second Matrix film, a lot of people don't like that. I quite enjoy parts of it, but a lot of the action in that is just fantastic, and there's nothing particularly new about it so far as from the new, so far as what was compared to what was new in The Matrix. You've got some like CGI stuff where he fights a bunch of Agent Smiths, but that's more on the CGI side of things. These people know how to do good action. They produced V for Vendetta,
Yeah, I
as
forgot about
well.
that one.
So they know what good action is. They just failed in the execution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I have two more things I would change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the other items I would change would be oh my gosh, I missed it. I wrote it down. Oh, this might sound a little bit cheesy. But even after the time that we watched it last week, I still got confused with this, and that might sound cliche or weird, but I would love some, like, when you're watching a movie and like you go to a new place and then like it puts the title of like the location at the bottom of the screen.
Oh yeah.
Even when it's like really obvious, like they're panning onto the Washington Mall and they still say Washington DC underneath it or whatever. I would have loved that for this movie, because there were so many times where I'm just like, I don't have a clue where the hell these people are. Like, are they on the ship? Are they in Jupiter? Are they on, like, where are they?
Yeah.
So I would have liked Balaam's planet, or Titus's ship or something, just in the corner to tell us, okay, where are we? How do we orient ourselves
Or the
in
name
this world?
name of the ship, right? Doesn't it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Or something to
I don't
give
mind
me
that.
a sense of direction.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would change, that we haven't mentioned already, is that the beginning of the film starts with a voiceover. It should end with a voiceover, unless we're going to get rid of the voiceover from the beginning, which I don't think we really need anyway. I just feel like that it kind of
That like
makes
a cinema rule.
I don't know. It just
Start
feels
with
like, to me, it
voiceover.
makes it less cohesive. Like even Enemy Mine had a voiceover at the beginning and the end. Even though there were two different people and two different voices, they still had it consistent.
Yeah, I think voiceovers work when there is a reason to have them. An example would be if you had a voiceover in Dracula, like the novel Dracula is written like a diary, right?
Yeah.
So you can have someone like reading the diary or something like that. I just don't like voiceovers that just catch you up on a bunch of stuff that you need to know in order to understand who the character is. That's basically what the beginning of this movie is.
Right.
It's like, hey, here's who my dad is. Here's where I was born. Here's what I'm doing now. Anyways, let's start the movie.
Yeah.
It's almost like the
better
Star
writing would have
Wars.
taken care of that.
Yeah, it's the Star Wars scroll,
The crawl.
but in voiceover instead of just a list of things at the beginning of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then you can have that sequence of events happen without voiceover. There's nothing particularly hard about understanding that she's an immigrant, and we kind of didn't really touch on this, but her father being killed by just random thieves who break into his house was really dumb to me. I don't even know. Like, do
We're
we
gonna
even
steal
need
your telescope and that's
yeah,
it.
yeah. I draw the line at the telescope. It's just a dumb way. It's a stupid way for a character to die, and a stupid random thing for something to happen in the beginning of a movie just to get rid of your dad and make you kind of a semi-orphan.
Yeah, especially since like they almost fake you out in the beginning to make you think that dad knows something.
Yeah.
Yes, and they pick a pretty big name actor for that role, and I was like, oh, maybe is he coming back?
Yeah, nope, cameo. And then you find out later that there's just no reason whatsoever that he even existed
Right.
in this movie.
Yeah, if that whole beginning scene just came out, it still would have been the same story.
If they're gonna do a voiceover, they could just say, "Yeah, my dad died when I was a kid, and my mom had me in a cargo container, and when we were crossing the ocean to move to America." Like, boom. There's an extra 20 minutes that we can devote to character development.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. All right, before we move on, is there anything else that anyone wants to say that they would change in the film, aside from the obvious what we've talked about? The dialogue's bad, the writing's bad, the acting's bad, etc.
And for some reason, I still kind of like it.
I know. I can't.
Seriously.
After all of this, I still really like this movie, and I just cannot understand why.
Get it.
It's because there's something unique and special about it, right? It almost fails while trying to be something unique, and there's something that's uniquely underdog about that.
Right. It just seems like it's such a cool idea, and it seems like a cool movie, and the name of the film is cool, and it just feels neat. That's it. Nothing else. But I don't know. All of the hate I dish on this film, I can't. I don't know. I still really like it. If someone were to say it's on right now, do you want to come watch it with me? And I'd say, yeah, sure. You paying for the popcorn?
It's your Big Trouble.
Ew.
All right, so let's kind of wrap things up then with the normal question, which is, would we remake this film? Amy, why don't you jump in? Go first.
Yes,
Explain
I would
why.
remake it because it just needs to. Everything everyone said.
That's a Amy needs to go to bed answer. Nick?
Following Amy, like, yeah, for us to have a podcast episode this long to discuss all the things that we've discussed about this movie and talk about all these pain points and all these things that we liked and didn't like about it. Yeah, absolutely remake it. We've just redefined what would make this a better movie in our own eyes. We wouldn't have spent this time, this effort into digging into these characters and into these roles and investing that time and energy into doing that.
Yes, I would remake it. The premise is solid. I don't want to say the bones are there. It's less than bone. The shadow of a good film is there.
It's an X-ray of a skeleton.
Yes, it is an X-ray of a skeleton that's been sitting
on a Polaroid.
The costumes are fantastic. I love the costumes. I can't say enough about it. Oh my god. But yeah, I feel like that it's a good premise. You just need to tighten some things up.
For me, the answer is also yes. Obviously, I've said this a couple times in the podcast, but I think it's worth repeating. When a film has excellent ideas and terrible execution, and again, that describes so many of the Wachowski sisters films, then I think it's an automatic candidate for a remake. Get better actors, get better screenwriters, make sure the plot makes sense, and make it longer and involve the characters. There's a lot to change here, but I would absolutely be in a seat in a movie theater to see a remake of this.
Yeah, though they painted a great picture in what the world could be, and I'd love to see it done right.
Oh, and by the way, Sean Bean has to die in the remake.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Original Remake Podcast. If you have any feedback or any questions, please email us at remake.cast@gmail.com. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.